Welcome back to Young Smart Money, show number 29 with me, your host, Apple Kreider, the show where we bring on people who are doing cool stuff, either financially or entrepreneurially, in order to get their best tips, tricks, and practices, and to hear about their journey along the way. Today, we have a very special guest. This is kind of an off-brand episode because I got in contact with the creator of Bill Nye, the Science Guy, and just making that connection, I knew I wanted to talk to this guy. I wanted to pick his brain. I wanted to see what had actually gone into this show, and I had said so many questions for the creator of Bill Nye the Science Guy. It was a big part of my childhood. So when I met Jim McKenna, who is the creator of Bill Nye the Science Guy, I knew I had to have him on the show. So that's what we're doing today. We're talking with him about the show, about his journey. So without further ado, let's just hop right into the interview and welcome Jim onto the show. James, welcome to Young Smart Money today. And first up, the first question that I just have to ask you is, what is it like to know Bill Nye? I gotta know.
I've known Bill for years. He is super smart. The guy is quite and funny and very creative. He's very sincere, and he really is enthusiastic about teaching science. From the moment I met him, he was literally a Boeing engineer. We were doing a local show here called Almost Live on the NBC affiliate. You can Google it or YouTube it. Actually, I'd suggest you YouTube it. There's some very funny early Bill Nye things before his character was worked out. He was cracking up the troops. My understanding of Bill's story is he was cracking up the troops at Boeing. He was an employee at Boeing. He referred to his job as building parts to snuff commies. And he actually had he designed a non-tip over coffee pot for a B-52, if I remember right, a landing gear spring for a 747. He really was in the business. He's an engineer by trade, Cornell graduate, studied with Carl Sagan. The guy knows his stuff in a very broad sense. He's a very big enthusiast on teaching science and promoting science. So, but he also loves Steve Martin. He was cracking up the troops there, cubicles of Boeing, doing Steve Martin impersonations. And they said, "Hey, you're really funny, and there's a Steve Martin comedy competition in Seattle. You should go down and do this." So he does, and he wins. And they send him, I think, to New York for the finals, and he knows he's not going to win. But he gets the bug, the showbiz bug.
Yeah.
I guess he starts showing up at clubs around the city with our original host Ross Schaefer, co-host John Keister. And I get introduced to him I'm a young producer on this show. He comes in one day and he's Bill Nye, and he didn't have his character figured out yet. We started playing around with this character called the Why Guy. We did the very first piece we did with him. It never aired. It was why does steam come out of the manhole covers in downtown Seattle? And so every time he pulled the cover off, it'd be a guy taking a shower, or somebody doing laundry. These jokes, and one day he has to fill in for a guest that hasn't shown up, and the host runs in and says, you're going to fill in, Bill, and he's like, well, what am I going to, well, just do that Bill Nye the Science Guy thing you do, and that's where his name came from there.
Really?
I literally was not in the meeting when all of a sudden he's this Bill Nye the Science Guy, but he does this first sketch was not first, but he does a sketch called Fun with Liquid Nitrogen, where he takes bananas and he dips them in liquid nitrogen, and they become hammers instantly. Or you can peel an onion, you put it in liquid nitrogen, you can peel an onion, just breaks apart, and very, very successful. And we started working together on other sketches. People would call and they ask us if we could do these kooky commercials. So we did crazy commercials for computer stores. We introduced the word wetland, if you can believe this, back in the mid-'80s.
Really?
Everybody knows what a wetland is now, but back in the day, nobody knew really the term wetland. They were swamps, marshes, and bogs. We got hired to use this crazy, kooky guy. I think you can see all these on YouTube. Bill Nye Wetlands, and you'll see some of our early work. We won a gold medal with a piece called Fabulous Wetlands.
Really?
That was a gold medal at the New York festivals, and we used that as the prototype for the show. It was about an 8-minute sketch, Bill out talking about swamps, and we were like, well, if we can do this, if we could talk for 8 minutes about swamps, we could probably talk a half hour about swamps, or we could probably talk about we were always being challenged by people when we pitched the original Bill Nye series.
Yeah.
We got turned down for 4 years by everybody, and there's always a reason to say no. That's one of the things
Yeah.
you'll find when you're pitching stuff. There's always a reason to say no. You have to overcome those reasons, right? And oh, he's too tall, he's too whatever, these kind of things. And one of the complaints was like, well, you can't fill a half an hour. You can't, you can't do a half an hour on volcanoes. Oh, really? Turns out some of our shows in rough cuts, they'd be 45 minutes
Yeah.
to 50 minutes long, and we trim these things down to a half an hour on the top.
Wow. So like as far as the idea goes, obviously you said you got the name from somebody just like throwing it out there one time, but like where did the idea come from for you to approach Bill and to really like pitch him this show? Like where'd you get this idea from?
Well, my wife/business partner, Erin Gottlieb, and myself and Bill were all from this NBC affiliate in Seattle. Bill and I have been working on this Almost Live show. My wife, Erin, was working on a morning show. She ends up getting fired one day. They come in, they fire everybody. Everybody here, you're fired. Get out of here. And so and she was going back to New York to work on the Today Show, and she actually had an interview, and I said, well, I've been here 12 years. You want to start a company, and we'll do some fun stuff. Where this VHS revolution has just started. We could do these VHS things for clients and stuff. We just kept using Bill as his talent. For computer commercials, or there's, like I said, these things on swamps, or boating safety. People would call, hey, can you use that science character guy, or these kind of things. And so the whole time, our one sentence business plan, you, Mr. Financial Guy, you have to have a business plan. Ours was so ridiculous. It was to do television for national distribution out of Seattle. Well, when you think of Seattle, it's not Hollywood, it's not New York. And it was such a stupid idea that we left it at one sentence. It was just an impossible idea. But what the heck, we might as well give it a shot here. So we would do these projects for clients, commercials for, a guitar business or whatever it would be. But always in the back of our mind, we wanted to do television series, a half-hour network, national, never thinking international back then.
Yeah.
And then it kept just going, well, we'd hear on the radio, there'd be these concerns that, all these American students are falling behind the rest of the world. They don't know math and science. They're falling behind. Oh, it's horrible. And we keep going, well, we've got this science character. Why don't we do something with them? And so we started trying to sell a series called Bill Nye the Science Guy. And,
wow.
And it took us 4 years. We pitched for 4 years. Like I said, everybody turned us down for whatever the reason. And then one day, it's a weird story. The FCC held up the licenses of 7 TV stations in America. It's a big TV station. It could be worth $1 billion. A Chicago TV station could be still worth $1 billion. Because they have to play quality children's programming. At the time, they were saying it was Jetsons and G.I. Joe cartoons were the quality children's programs. And then the FCC said, no, that's not going to happen anymore. And you guys really need to play some quality TV programming. And it sent a panic out in the industry.
Yeah.
He was there to say, hey, don't worry, industry. We've got just the thing for you. It's this new show we've got going. We got that right. And at the same time, Bill sends his tape down to L.A. This agent is the son of this guy at Disney who says we're going to save everybody. And he goes, I wonder if this is what my dad's looking for, this show that he's just saying that we're going to make. And so he takes it down the hall, he gives it to Dad, shows it to Dad. Dad says, go get those guys. And the next thing we know, there's like a Disney commando unit. We still keep connected with some of these people. They are awesome, but they came up, blew us away. Just from that moment on, we're at the PBS affiliate in Seattle. We're twiddling our thumbs. We're sitting there like, oh, I don't know if is this real? Bill, if this is not real, I'm going to kill you. And we thought it was Almost Live, the show we all came from, this comedy show. We thought they were playing a joke on us. And all of a sudden, the door bursts open. These Disney folk come in, and our lives changed at that moment. Just boom, and the show, goes from a national production to an international production.
Yeah,
it just took off. We were still to this day we're stunned at the success of that show.
I would imagine so. I mean, even today, like that showed a huge impact on me. All the people that I talked to about, like, everybody knows about Bill Nye. It was like my substitute teacher's like go-to thing in school. Like it's just so, it's such a like quintessential part of like elementary school and middle school to me, that it's so cool that it really like took off. And was that partnership with Disney and PBS, do you think that was the thing that really like pushed it over to become so big?
Well, it's funny because, Disney looked at it as quote unquote a qualifier, something to get the FCC off the station's backs. We always looked at it as like, well, we'd like it to be this, like a Sesame Street maybe. It could be something like really could be cool, ends up on PBS and teach. And it was funny. We pitched the pilot aired on PBS. Disney saw the pilot. They wanted to take it and distribute it to the commercial stations. We called PBS and said, "Hey, Disney." They said, "Go with Disney, and we'll come back next year and do a joint production." And that's what they ended up doing. So it became the very first television series in the history of television to actually be on public television and commercial television at the same time.
Wild.
Because there was such an emphasis. It was so important to everybody to teach kids science. We needed to get these kids to understand that science is. I was terrified of science. I never took a science class in high school.
Really?
I was afraid of science, not even knowing anything about it, right? So you must have to take a bunch of math or and no, you don't have to. You don't have to take a bunch of math. It turns out science is a blast. I'm actually reading right now Brief History in Time, Stephen Hawking's famous book. I finally got around to reading the thing. There's very little math in it, but it's mind-blowing. And I, too, was turned on to science by Bill Nye. By doing the series, I became quite the athlete. So,
wow.
Yeah. And it's still gratifying to see it on. We get letters all the time from kids that they became doctors. Bill was saying here, we had a reading here about a few years back, and he goes, "First kid that steps on the moon that saw the show." And I was like, wow, Bill, could happen, right? Could happen, right? The first kid that steps on the moon that was influenced by the show would be, a dream come true.
Wow. I bet. And I mean, that show, it had a big impact on me. I know I'm not a science guy, but I know a lot of people who like really got turned on to science from Bill Nye. So that's such a wild like experience.
Hey, even if you're doing money and you're learning percentages, you're doing science.
Yeah.
Math was invented by scientists to explain our world, right? So, if you're doing financial literacy, you're trying to do PE reports how come these guys lost this much money? Oh, they're charging it off on this quarter. How much are they charging off? This percentage? Holy smokes! That's all science, So, or if you save at 8%, you can do the math on. You can do using science. You can figure out where you should be in 10, 20 years if you had $100 or these kind of things. So.
Well, there we go.
But everywhere uses in a way. So you don't even know. So.
As far as your team goes, when you were first building this, you said it was your wife and your business partner, now wife, and Bill. But other than that, was it really just you three that really brought this whole thing to life?
We started in a closet at the PBS affiliate here. There was another guy named Simon who was awesome. He's the Kiwi. He's actually Rick Steves' producer now. With Rick Steves, the travel guy, and coincidentally, I gave Rick Steves his very first TV appearance back in the day. As a young producer at that station I was talking about earlier. Yeah. But we started with the three of us. I'll give you a quick story here because you'll love this.
All right.
We get a kooky letter. Bill hands this thing over the desk, in front of me like this, and he goes, "Here, maybe you can do something with this." And it's this weird letter to Bill, and we don't know if this guy is a genius that's written this letter or if that person's insane. But it was an amazing letter, I remember, and it was like, well, if we ever get the series, I'll contact this person and see if they want to be an intern on the show. We'll have him be an intern. Maybe they'll. So we get the series. The pilot, airs. Disney flies up. We get this series. One of the very first calls I make is to this kid. Hey, would you be interested in? His name is Ian Saunders. He became an intern on the show. He went on to become a researcher. He went on to write, get some Emmys, a couple of Emmys for writing on the show. Now he's an assistant to Bill Gates.
Wow.
Again, that's so gratifying. We've had a lot of these kids, we had kids bicycle out from the East Coast to actually be interns on the show.
What?
The show, it became one of these things where, like, people had to come out and yeah, I'm meet this guy at a coffee stand, and then he's serving me coffee at a drive-through espresso stand, and then pretty soon, a few days later, I see him. He's my server at a restaurant. Like one of these things. And then a few days later, he's an intern at the show. And he's kind of zeroed in. And he's one of the guys that had bicycled out from the East Coast. And he's like, he zeroed himself in to get to Nye Labs. It was this building down in Pioneer Square. But the word was, it was an unmarked building. He scoped it out. And he found where we were. And somehow he got himself in. And now he's in the biz. He still works in the industry.
Wow.
CBS affiliate here.
That's what? I mean,
the staff grew out as the pilot was a very small staff, obviously, teeny, and then hired, purpose built, and then once the series got going, we ended up with probably about a staff of about 150, and it was from start to finish, from pre-production to audio post-production. There'd probably be about 150 people.
That's such an operation. Like, I can't even imagine. Like, I create video content myself, and just the amount of things you could do with 150 people. That's just
yeah. They were all dedicated. Again, it was like Seattle. Nobody does TV.
Yeah.
But the audio place was Bad Animals. They're all the big bands owned by Ann and Nancy Wilson, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, all the way back to Bachman Turner Overdrive, and have recorded there, Jimi Hendrix. So we did our audio there. We did our post-production at another place in town here, a couple of different post-production places. What's really funny is when it comes to television budgets, I know they're smaller these days.
Yeah.
Ours was considered a pretty small budget at the time. I can give you a comparison. We were about a little under 200,000 an episode, I think, there, and I remember they were doing Northern Exposure here in Seattle at the same time, and I think that was $1.5 million per episode. They were an hour on, but that we're talking apples and platinum here. It's all relative. Again, it seems like our budget was a big budget show. We were trying to match somewhere around Pee Wee's Playhouse budget, but we didn't. I think we were about half of what Pee Wee's Playhouse budget was. I don't know what Beekman's was, for example, but we tried to put as much as we could on the screen to make it a compelling show. It worked. Yeah.
So between pitching for 4 years and having not as big of a budget as some of these other shows, what were some of your biggest challenges as you were bringing this thing to life and really trying to get it in front of as many people as possible?
Well, that was probably one of the biggest challenges. We'd fly down to I remember the very first pitch. My wife and I are still poor. Mm-hmm. We get a call from a friend of ours. She invites us to a network executives cocktail party. Brandon Tartikoff's cocktail party for his new rollout at MTM Productions. We want to come to the party down in LA. And I was like, we'll be right down. And we're gonna pitch this series while we're down there. Okay. So, but we're so poor that we have to drive down. My wife/business partner is not in a relationship with me. We drive down. We're so poor we have to share a motel room. That was a little awkward. We drive down to LA, go to the cocktail party. The next day, we can't afford a cell phone, of course, at the time. They're still expensive.
Oh man!
We're standing in front of the Circle K with the phone, at the phone booth there. We're making calls to all these studios, and we would say, hey, we're a couple of hayseeds from Seattle. We've got this show idea. Would you guys mind if we came in and make a presentation? Mm-hmm. And Seattle was just starting to kind of get a little, had the Pearl Jam sound, the grunge movement was starting to come out of here. And like I said, the Northern Exposure was being done here. So there was this Twin Peaks. There was kind of this cachet with the Northwest. The people, LA were intrigued. So we got in. Nobody turned us down. We got in. We made all these pitches, but they were some of the most strange, crazy pitches. The classic Hollywood pitches. I've got, like I said, the rejection file. That it's about that thick.
Oh my gosh!
Just some of the strangest things, but it was quite. Every pitch you make, again, from a financial perspective, it's the same thing. If you're going to go pitch your business, okay, so you're going to get rejected. Be prepared to be rejected. Learn from being rejected. Put that into your plan for next time. people are gonna spot weaknesses in your proposal. How come you guys don't have this, or why isn't this there, or these kind of things, right? Some of them you have to just ignore. I mean, we were dealing with a tall, guy. They wanted multi-ethnic. They wanted a cartoon. We didn't want to do a cartoon. These kind of arguments. So well, some of these suggestions you take, and some of them you don't. But you craft your pitch. You get better and better, and then again, the key thing is that serendipitous moment where Bill just happens to send this tape. You have to be ready to be nabbed by. You have to be ready. If you're that little fish, you have to be ready to be caught. So, if you will, too. You have to prepare yourself to be ready to make that deal. So
exactly, keeping your eye open for those opportunities, because if you're not looking for them, they might just pass you right by, and you wouldn't even be ready for it. So. What's
so funny is we didn't even pitch Disney originally. We ruled them out in the original round of pitching because, this doesn't meet their sensibility.
Really?
They never want the thing. And then, so we pitched everybody else but Disney. And then here, lo and behold, they're the ones that come in the door. But we were prepared. So when they came in the door, we were ready to, and I remember we were prepared at X, whatever the amount was, and they came in here. We did one of these things. I don't think we ever really came together, but we went out at them and we got it done. That's the number one thing is once
making it happen.
Once that, as Bill used to say, once that sled's on the hill, you're going to ride it, and you ride it as best you can. You do your best job of riding that thing, do your best work. So that's what we did. We knew, all of us, all the kids, everybody showed up. We knew we had an opportunity, so we weren't going to blow it.
Yeah. All right. So you said that you had like $200,000 going into each episode, 150 people. What does the production process look like? What are those people doing? What is that money going towards? And what's the timeline of an episode of TV? I don't know much about this, and I'm sure our listeners aren't super familiar either. So could you just fill us in with what the logistics behind that actually look like?
At those, and again, we were a lower level national production show, but they're, bigger. I remember reading back in the day, I'm sure it's a little bit different now, but, you have to, it takes a long time. I mean, there's pre-production, there's research, 6 months is a very short, I remember reading back in the day, that would be one of the quickest turnarounds for a television from pitch to on air. 6 months, that would be the fastest. So sometimes, I remember PBS, they were 2 years. Now it's 3 years for shows. They tell us it just takes that long. We wrote a book here recently for a publisher. Here, do a shameless plug.
For sure.
We did this financial book here, speaking of financial literacy, and with Workman Publishing. It took 4 years. We've never done a book before. We couldn't understand why it takes 4 years. Now that we've done one, we understand why it takes 4 years. For television production, I might be a little off, but I mean, so there's idea. We've got this idea. Okay, well now we have to substantiate the idea. It could be very simple. I remember one time hearing MTV Cops was written on a napkin. That's pitched, and that's the 6 month one I'm describing. Otherwise, well for us it was each episode. What's the show about? What would be compelling? This is before the internet. We had to do all this research. We'd send these researchers to the library. I had this small team of researchers. They come back with these research packets, sometimes better than the scripts. But then the writers, they would make a presentation to the writers. This show's on volcanoes. And we would shoot 4 shows at a time. We would kind of shoot volcanoes, walks. If we traveled, we would try and catch topics for 3 or 4 different shows at the same time while we're on the road, for example. So, but let's say we're doing something on volcanoes. So these researchers are coming with these packets of volcanoes. They've presented to the writers. The writers all sit around. Okay, now what do we do? We'll do a sketch on Jimmy Eat Your Crust, or Timmy Eat Your Crust, and they do some about Earth's crust, or we'll send Bill into a volcano at Mount St. Helens, or we'll do liquid nitrogen, or we'll do a little display on the stage. All that has to be then planned, production plan, scheduled, lit, sound crews are hired. It's shot. Somebody has to manage that media. Then the media. So there's there's interns to assistant editors, and then assistant editors that are doing string outs of chunks of the shows. They'll maybe be in charge of from here to here, or maybe they're other shows, maybe they're in charge of doing the B-roll from some town.
Wow.
The editor then is stringing the stuff together. So in our series, we shoot the shows, let's say over the course of maybe 3 to 4 weeks, these chunks. They'd be edited. We give the editors 3 weeks for every episode. So the last week, they're getting pretty close to like locking down. We get by that Wednesday of that last week trying to lock the show to time. So we'd be, let's say the show would be, I always like them long. I know that Lauren Michaels does his show for Saturday Night Live. They're always way long on the rehearsals. Trim down, keep your best material. That's very standard in the business.
Okay.
So we trim it down to just, PBS length. And then on that Friday, okay, the show's locked. Then it goes to post-production, where it's color corrected, all the graphics would go in. We ended up, and then from there we'd go to, and that would be a week, and then it would go to another week of sound post-production where they put in all the wacky, crazy sounds, which were very revolutionary at the time. You hear them all the time. You hear it all the time now, but I mean, at the time that was pretty cutting edge to put in all those sound effects. And so that's kind of and then the show would be, then we would have to do 8 different versions of the show, textless versions, foreign language versions, no language versions, all H, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H versions, if I remember right.
Oh my.
So for various distribution channels and these, if it could be sent to China or these kind of things. So
wow.
It got to be, and again, we're a small show. We were even our Biz Kid show is nothing compared to a big network show. What would be a big one right now? Game of Thrones, for example. Those productions, motion pictures, these $300 million motion pictures. Those things, they have. Watch the credits at the back of those things.
Oh man!
And what's really funny is that's not everybody. A lot of those people, those are the leads, and then usually they try and list everybody, but a lot of times they. So it's still a big business. It's still fun. But the best thing is that people like yourself can do very small level productions that are just as compelling. And for me, some of the most exciting stuff I see is done by high schoolers. We do a lot of these things on our Biz Kid show. Yeah. Like high schoolers like yourself, they've got a podcast or they've got something online they're doing. A zillion followers. They're making great money. There's a girl we did in Florida here just a couple years back. She's making really good money doing fashion streaming, shows on fashion online. And and there's simple shows from her living room and huge following. So
and that's so much.
And you see that's the problem with nobody's watching network. Nobody, but the numbers for the industry itself has broadened out. People are looking at screens, but they're looking at zillions of different shows and presentations.
Exactly. It's just getting so much more democratized. Instead of having these big pillar organizations, it's so much more spread out into the people who are actually creating the content on such a smaller scale.
Well, I'll tell you now, I mean, Apple, if you would, back in the 70s, if you come to somebody and said, I'm 19 years old, I want to do a show about money and finance, I can tell you the story because I tried doing this and there's this gatekeeper there, that was the problem. And they pat you on the head and they go, hey, that's a nice idea, Apple. Why don't you go back to, doing what you're supposed to do. That person's gone now, which is fantastic. So people like yourself and as you say, you'll know if you're successful or not.
Exactly. The market will decide. Like the market will just tell you if what you're doing is valuable or not.
Yeah, fantastic. I love it. So.
Yeah. So you mentioned Biz Kids, and I want to get into that a bit. That's a newer project. So could you give our audience just a brief overview of what that project's all about? We
were approached here a few years ago by America's credit unions, and they asked us if we could do for money. There is no money and finance series like Bill Nye the Science Guy turns out, and they wanted to basically own the financial literacy initiative, teaching kids in America about money and finance, and can we do something similar to the Bill Nye series? And so we created a series called Biz Kids. It's funny, I had even during the Nye days, I'd been trying to come up with a financial literacy show I'd been interested in personally for years. My dad used to subscribe to the Wall Street Journal. I'd read it as a very young kid, and I remember, as I said, Apple, I pitched my peers at the NBC affiliate a financial literacy show called Moneyline. And I had a 3-page proposal. And I pitched this idea because I was like, well, if I'm interested in money and finance, maybe others might be
Yeah.
too. And like I said, they patted me on the head and told me to get back to being a stage manager. Okay, so but I always kept that idea around, and even when we were doing the Nye series, I started playing around with a concept called financial genius. And what are you, some sort of financial genius? Well, it is. Who's you? And at the same, but my show, I have to admit, was lifeless. I couldn't get any life to this thing. And I get to about episode 6 of writing this thing, and I go, boy, this sucks. This is not good. And one day we meet a Canadian woman, Janine Glista. She has an idea for a show called Biz Kids. And she was inspired by the Nye series. She wants to meet these producers. And she came in with a presentation. It was more stories on entrepreneurs like yourself that have these businesses. And at that moment, the light bulb went off, and it was like, well, hey, let's combine the two ideas. We'll teach how to do percentages, or we'll teach about how to open a bank account. But then we'll have these stories about people that they opened a bank account and they saved up $1 million, or they opened, or or they start, or so we do about 5 stories per episode on kids that range from 6 to maybe 26 is we say kids, but on the outside there, the sweet spots about your age, 17 to 19-year-olds that are interested in starting their own businesses.
Yeah.
Some of these kids have gone on. I'm in the wrong business. They've made way more money than me. Snapcap kids. Are you familiar with Snapcaps? They're pop bottles with a picture on this side and a magnet on this side. I think they sold $6 million or something like that.
Wild.
Mose Bose. He's a kid in Chicago. He made a tie for Obama. He makes these really nice ties. He was also on Shark Tank here recently. Making $1 zillion. This girl I mentioned, I think earlier down in Florida. Those are 3 examples. We probably have 200 or 300 examples of these kids that are from lemonade stands, dog walkers, babysitting, car repair. Some of these kids come up with some of these businesses. Old guys like me, I would never even think of. And we cover both sides. Some of them do successful. We had some guys that were stock investors right before '08, and they collapsed right in '08. There, we'll cover some of the failures too, so people can learn from these.
Yeah.
But the idea again is we take these simple financial concepts. It's an idea like, well, just like Bill Nye the Science Guy, it's a kid's show. But it's not. It's simple financial stuff, and if a kid can figure this stuff out, if a kid can be successful, then we've had many letters. We got very early on. We got a letter I remember from a mom that broke somewhere in the southeast. Life is not good. They watch a series. They watch a couple of shows. The kids get inspired to start a business. Pretty soon they're financially stable. The letter was thanking us for inspiring these kids to start a business. I don't remember what their businesses were. Simple lemonade stands or something. Sometimes you could buy water at Costco for a couple of dollars, and they would sell them at a festival, and they'd make $2 each or something like that. And all of a sudden they've got some cash. That's what we try to inspire, just kids to go out. You hear, well, I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. This is like, well, here's some examples of other kids just like you that. So that's where that show.
That's so cool.
70 something episodes of that.
Wow.
They're online and on PBS also. Similar model to the Bill Nye, we get played in the classroom.
Nice.
A lot of schools don't offer financial literacy classes anymore, which is really too bad, because if you think about it, it is reading, writing, and arithmetic. It isn't 3 R's. You have to learn how to write to be in business. You have to be financially literate. You have to do math. You have to, anyway. So
it's just applying all of the skills that we learn in school to something that's actually going to be applicable for our real lives. So it's a pretty radical idea. But yeah, it's a shame. It's really a shame that that's not something that's emphasized in schools.
One of the things that we find, let me ask you this. Do you have a credit card, Apple?
Do I have a what?
A credit card.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you have any debt?
Do I have any debt? I have student loan debt.
Are you on top of it?
I don't carry a balance on my credit cards, no. Never would do that. Never paid a cent of interest.
We have constantly running into these kids that would get into $30,000 of credit card, $15,000 to $30,000. these credit cards show up, hey, it's cash, these kind of things, and they don't know because they've never been taught anything in class or anything about any of this stuff. And so you get a credit card, and the commercials look, hey, look how easy it is. You can do anything with this credit card.
Yep.
Yes, but you have to pay for it. That's the part that kind of like is not taught. All of a sudden, this bill shows up, and it can be overwhelming for some of these people. Student debt's the other one that you guys are, unfortunately, that's. And we've been doing we actually did an episode here recently called "To College or Not to College," because so many kids feel that they just have to go to college. That's their only option. Oh, high school, I got to go to college. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no clue what I'm going to do, but I'm going to go to college. Okay.
Yeah.
And we hear now, we did something with the guys from This Old House. We did something from Deadliest Catch, the guys from Deadliest Catch.
Yeah, wow.
Creator of that. They come, Mike Rowe. They appeared in the episode because there's so many kids needed in the trades to be carpenters, pipe fitters, plumbers, electricians, underwater deep sea welders. These jobs, they pay huge amounts of money.
Yeah.
You can't find them, and you start off with no debt. There's no debt. You go into one of these things, but a lot of people look down on the trades. They think they've got to go to college. They pick up $100,000 of debt
and land themselves a $40,000 a year job.
Yeah, and the math doesn't work out, right? So it's unfortunate. I mean, we're not saying don't go to college, but it might not be for everybody.
Have that self-awareness.
Ways to not pick up so much debt.
Exactly. You got to look at your options, and that's something that not a lot of people do. People see this like traditional path that they think they have to go down, and there's just so many more options that are available to you. And that's really what I'm trying to provide with this podcast, with my YouTube videos, and with everything that I put out. So real quick before we go, where can people find out more about you, more about Biz Kids? Where should I send our listeners to get some cool resources?
BizKids.com, I think, would probably be the best connection. There's Nye Labs for Bill, if you want to check out Bill. And again, like I said, if you want to check out some of the early funny stuff, pre Bill Nye the Science Guy, go to YouTube and check out Almost Live. There's some pretty funny comedy bits from back in the day there, I think.
I'll be sure to find some of those clips and link them up in the show notes as well, just to get you guys some access to some of these back to the day episodes. Well, thank you so much again for being on the show today, Jim. I appreciate your time. And I'm glad you got to spend it here with our listeners. I'm sure you provided some serious value, and I hope our listeners get a ton out of this conversation.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Jim, thank you so much again for your time and for your story. It was really beneficial for me. I mean, I had no idea what went into a TV show, and me on this small scale YouTube production. It's really a stretch to imagine what that would look like with 150 people and over $200,000 going into each episode. That just seems bananas to me. But thanks again for sharing your time with us today. If you guys enjoyed this show, if you remember Bill Nye the Science Guy, if that is what your substitute teachers used to throw on as well, definitely leave us a 5-star review on this podcast. I would love to hear from you guys, hear your Bill Nye the Science Guy stories. You can also feel free to DM me those at Apple Crider Official. I always look forward to hearing from y'all, and we are pushing for 50 reviews by the end of the year. So if you guys do have 2 minutes to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, that would mean so much to me. I'm really trying to help more people get exposed to the podcast, so that would really mean a lot to me. If you could leave us a review, share us with a friend, that would be awesome. Anyways, my name has been Apple Crider, and I will see you guys on Friday.